So this is not going to be an easy video for me to make. I had to adjust something. It's odd that September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, and it's odd and even more odd that what I'm about to talk about happened in a September. It was a September a long time ago. Not something that's going to be easy, and I don't know if I'm going to get through it or not. We'll see. If I don't get through it, this video won't make it to YouTube because I'll just delete it. There was a recent discussion about people who felt suicidal after AA meetings, and I'm sure that all of us, if you've been in a cult religion for a long period of time, you've seen people take themselves out of this world. You've seen people die from suicides because they can't overcome their addictive problems, and members of the fucking cult religion will sit around and talk about how some have to die so that others can live. Or they'll say, by the grace of God, there go I, which I think is a very, very high-handed, arrogant, sanctimonious fucking thing to say when you're considering the fact that they're saying they were chosen by God to live, and the rest of us assholes were just left to die in the middle of everything. I'm going to put a bunch of trigger warnings out before I get started with this one. A whole bunch of trigger warnings, because this is going to be kind of graphic. It's going to be kind of visceral. And if you're disturbed by, talk of suicide attempts, or you're disturbed by anything like that, you might want to sit this one out or just skip it. I won't go into a whole lot of detail about what was going on in my life at the time that I chose to do what I did. I was in the slum tenement of an apartment building in a very shithole state. Let's just say what happened afterwards is why I call it a shithole state, of all shithole states. You'll understand after I get done talking. It was a really ugly, disgusting slum tenement of a place, and my life was completely becoming unraveled and completely falling apart, and nothing was working out in my favor at all. It seemed like everything I turned to was just another failure, another fuck up. Could not stop drinking. It's funny, my drinking problem actually intensified down the road later after all this took place, but I'm not going to go into that yet. I don't remember exactly what the thought was the morning that it all went down. I do remember where I was, of course. Obviously, I remember where I was because I'm talking about it. But one thing I had always taken pride on in my life was being a hard worker. Might be a silly thing to take pride in, but I was always that dependable employee that was always there on time, drunk or sober. I worked overtime, all that other kind of thing. It didn't pan out to anything in the long span of my 46 years of existence almost. Come November, I'll be 46. Got laid off, got fucked over by employers, all the other stuff that happens in life. But I always was proud of myself for being, a hard worker, and my job was unraveling at this time. It was a hell of a drop down the pay scale from what I had normally done. I had been a printing press operator for a while, and now I was barely hanging on to anything, and this job wasn't exactly a great job, but it was something to hang on to, I was mainly just living to drink at this time, to be honest, but I woke up and I couldn't remember if I was supposed to be at work or not on that day, because our days off and days to be scheduled rotated around and all that other kind of thing. It was one of those kind of places. It was early. It was early in the morning. The sun was coming up, I remember, and sorry, sinuses. But I had about 1 million voice mails from family members all reminding me of what a failure and a fuck up I was going to be and always going to be. And I'm just trying to give you kind of an idea where I was. I'm not placing blame here before some asshole jumps in on the comments, oh, you're a perpetual victim or some shit like that. But I couldn't remember if I was supposed to be at work or not. And I tried to call, and say, hey, because it was not uncommon to do this where I was working. It was not uncommon to call somebody on the phone and say, am I on the schedule today or not? Because it was one of those kind of places that had a lot of students, and it had, it was a part-time job at some hardware warehouse kind of thing. And I don't remember exactly what the run of my thoughts were. It turned out, by the way, I didn't have to be at work that day. The whole fucking thing could have been avoided. Talk about bitter irony. But I decided I was going to end it. And I remember the apartment I was living in was a complete and utter fucking mess at the time. It was a slum tenement, really run down kind of place. It was one of those places you couldn't go down the hallway without, somebody either trying to bug you for some cigarettes or money, or you had to worry about maybe getting hit in the head and your wallet taken. And it was one of those kind of places. People would get their cars stolen out of the parking lot or vandalized or. But I remember making a decision that I was going to put an end to it all. And I started looking around the apartment. I knew I had a pistol. And I said, well, if I got a pistol, I can put it, it was a high caliber it was a 9mm. So I said, if I put it underneath the chin here, I can pull the trigger and I'm not going to survive that. But I couldn't find it. I was drinking at the time. I had been on a drunken bender all night long. I don't think I'd slept more than an hour or two. I passed out around 4 in the morning and woke back up about 6 in the morning. So I kind of knew, even if it was a work day, I probably wasn't even going to be able to fake it and go in. I spent a lot of money on eye drops and Tic Tac mints and aftershave. I always wear aftershave anyway. It's Old Spice aftershave. People, younger women have told me, you smell just like my grandfather. Although I keep going at the rate I'm going, I'll be old enough to be somebody's grandfather and it won't be weird like that. Although they will always tell me it smells really good, but there was no way I was going to be able to splash on a lot of aftershave, put mints in my mouth and eye drop. I wasn't going to be able to fake it. I was having trouble walking. So I knew, even if I go to work, I'm fired anyway. But I couldn't find the pistol. I couldn't find the bullets. And I started looking through, I can't remember. I don't want to go into a lot of detail because it's really an ugly thing that happened to me. But I found a fucking hunting knife. I don't know where I had bought it from. There was a time when I used to collect knives. Believe it or not, I had several different ones. Every kind of, the type you put in your shoe, the type, I forgot what they call them, the butterfly knives, the switch knives. I like to collect them. It wasn't that I was actually going to use them. I just went through a phase where I was always buying a pocket knife. I had Swiss Army knives, pocket knives, those kinds of things. But I found a hunting knife. One of those types that, like the Green Berets, it was kind of like what Rambo had in the movie. It looked like that, kind of a hunting knife. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to use this. I was pretty intoxicated. My first inclination was to go ahead and slash my throat, but I just couldn't. I couldn't seem to do it. I got the thing all the way up to here, and I just really could not. There was a part of me that kept freezing. So I decided to slit my wrists. And I had too many AA people tease me and too many deputies tease me about you. And you'll understand the deputies in a minute about you didn't really want to die. You cut the wrong way. Well, fuck you. I didn't know there was a right way. I got the scar on one of them here. I don't know how well you can see that or not. It got some tendon damage. These fingers are a little numb. This one didn't get it that bad. I got the scar there from that one too. I don't even think it's very visible, to be honest, any longer. But I slit my wrist. Now the first one I slit was my right wrist. I got some arteries. I had to be stitched inside in both wrists. But I got this wrist, and I remember sitting down and I remember saying, this is how it's going to end. There was a feeling inside of me. I don't know how to describe it. I don't think I'll ever be able to quite put it into words, but I says, this is how it's all going to end, right here in this shitty apartment. This is where it's going to all end. This is the end of my life now. Everything I dreamed of, everything I ever hoped for, everything I ever wanted is all gone. And I remember I seemed like I had my phone on and it was playing one voicemail right after the other at the time. In fact, I do remember I had it on while I was sitting there bleeding. I was bleeding out this wrist and I was drinking. And I was just hearing one message right after the other. If you don't pull yourself together, you fucking loser. I'm telling you right now, you gotta. And I was just thinking, and I remember thinking, well, I'll never talk to them again. I got to the window of the apartment. I remember I opened it. I wanted fresh air in the apartment. And when I opened up the apartment window, there was this, that kind of wood smell, that burning wood smell from chimneys that infiltrates the skies right around that time of year when it starts to get cooler. That was kind of in the air, even though it wasn't that cold that morning. But I remember that. I remember that scent, and I remember saying, well, this will be the last fall I ever see, and then I realized I wasn't going to live to see the entire fall. I realized that I was never going to see the winter. I remember that was what I was thinking about at the time. I said, I'm never going to see another winter. I'm never going to see another summer. I'm never going to see the seasons change again. And I went ahead and cut this wrist so I could speed the process up. There was blood everywhere. I was bleeding all over myself. I was just pouring blood. I got arteries in both wrists. I had to be stitched on the inside. And the strangest feeling come over me. I don't know how to describe it. But I realized that it wasn't just the seasons I was never going to see change. I realized everything was over with. I said, well, I'll never kiss another girl. I'll never, at the time I was dreaming about buying a motorcycle one day, even though I never bought the motorcycle. But I said, I'll never ride another motorcycle again. I said, I'll never read another book. I realized that I was never going to accomplish anything that I had said I one day wanted to do in life. There were places that I one day said I wanted to see, and I was never going to see them. And I realized that, I don't know, for a second I didn't know if I had the sound on or not. I realized that it was all going to end, that I was going to be dead. I remember when I was looking out the window, I remember saying to myself, I don't want to die in this nasty, filthy, stinking fucking apartment. I remember saying, I just don't want to die in here, and I remember going outside, and there was a field nearby. It was kind of a field, and with some trees overhanging, and I said, I'm going to go lay down over there, and that's where I'm going to watch it end. I took my bottle of my cigarettes with me. I was having difficulty lighting a cigarette because my fucking thumb and everything had gone haywire at this point. It took me several months to get them fully back to use. I had a hard time lighting cigarettes for a long time after that, but I took my bottle and I took my cigarettes and I went over there and I sat down, and I don't remember who saw me. I think it was a lady walking a dog. It was a lady walking a dog. She was coming towards me and she was on the phone and she was saying, I've got a situation here on my hands, because I was covered in blood. I had blood all the way down, all over my shirt, everything. I was covered in blood. And I remember when the police showed up, the cops were meaner than shit. I'll put it that way. I got slammed on the ground. I got a knee in my fucking neck. I got handcuffed. And They had me move my fingers, and that's why I said shithole state. I'm getting the more of what happened, but they slammed me down on a stretcher really hard. They took me to an emergency room in the county emergency room where they stitched me up. They wouldn't answer any of my questions or anything. They just said that, I don't even remember what they said. They were very fucking rude. And I remember not knowing what was going to happen. I was in a state of utter fucking confusion. And the nurse comes in and she tells me that the state where I was living at the time, the state doesn't have a program for people who have done what I have done. And She was very casual and blasé about the whole entire thing, and I said, "Well, I don't understand. I didn't. It had not occurred to me that I had committed something that they weren't going to let me go home for at the time. Believe it or not, I actually had not figured that out. They sent me to. They sent me to down the hallway on the stretcher. I couldn't sign a piece of paper. My hands were all bandaged up. But they said they didn't have a program for people who had done what I had done, and that the only thing the state could do with people like me is put them in jail. Yeah, they were going to put me in jail. They said I would be segregated from the rest of the population and placed in a cell with other people with mental health issues, but that's where I was going to have to go until I could go before a judge who would probably court order me to a state hospital. And one of the nurses chuckled and said, "And if you think prisons are bad, wait till you see what the state mental hospitals are like." She actually kind of thought it was fucking funny. They sent this big fat redneck sheriff, deputy sheriff, to pick me up. He kind of took one look at me and he takes these handcuffs out of his pocket and he deliberately handcuffs me where my wrists are wounded and it's just been stitched up. And I remember him looking at me and he'd say, "We got a special place for people like you." And as he was leading me down the hallway, he grabbed my elbow and he slammed me into every wall going down the hallway. He hit my head 2 or 3 times when I got to the jail. I had a major cut on my head from him. But while we're in the car going to the jail, he lights a cigarette up and he blows it in my face from the back seat. And I asked him if I could have a cigarette. And can't give you a cigarette, son. Don't give cigarettes to shitholes like, to shitty people like yourself, and all that. And he's blowing smoke in my face. And he starts telling me about, that I'm not going to be able to defend myself when I get to jail because I'm all bandaged the fuck up. He's telling me about I'm now at the mercy of whatever is in there. I'm led in there. I'm thrown into a tank. I'm left there for hours. I'm bleeding profusely from my wounds from where I've been handcuffed and everything. I was finally put in a cell in a separated unit with other people. If you think you've seen crazy people, you've never seen anything like what I was exposed to in there. These people were totally deranged. Totally violent, totally unhinged, totally insane. They were in there for every kind of offense that I don't even like to go over the details of, but they were really totally insane. I was left in there for a very long period of time, I think 3 or 4 weeks. I was never given any medication. There was a doctor who would occasionally, come by, check my wounds, send me right back in. I remember there was blood pouring out of my hands late one night, and I asked this particular guard, I says, "Do you think there'd be any possibility I could use a telephone?" And he just spits his tobacco on the ground. He looks at me and he says, "Not a chance," like that. So I'm left. I was finally court ordered to a mental institution, a state mental institution, and the nurse was actually kind of right. The place was totally fucking insane. It was dangerous. People attacked one another in the hallways over nothing. People would just fly off the rage at you for no reason whatsoever and attack you. My hands are all bandaged up. I can't do anything. I can't fight back. I can't do anything about it. I was able to get through on the phone to certain family members. I told them what happened. They just hung the phone up on me. One of them did tell me nobody's going to come down there and help you no matter what. You put yourself in this position. They kept me in there for, I don't remember how long. I do remember one deputy when I was in jail. I think it's important for me to tell this story. When they said the doctor wants to see you one morning, check my wounds. He made it a point to handcuff me right over the injuries. And of course, he, like the other deputy sheriff before him, he led me down the hall by my hair. And he said, suicides cut straight down. They don't cut across. So when you get out of here, make sure you cut down, because we don't need no more of your kind in the world. That was his exact words to me. After I was able to get out of there with no place to go and nothing, I was able to move in with a guy that I had worked with, who let me sleep on his couch. I was kind of pretty unemployable at this point. Started going back to AA meetings. I can't tell you how many fucking people made it a point to tell me that I didn't really want to die, otherwise I would have cut straight down. I can't tell you how many fucking people told me I just wanted some attention, that it was all about me, otherwise I would have cut straight down. I can't tell you how many people laughed at me. They laughed at me and they told me, if you really wanted to kill yourself, you couldn't even do that right. You're such a fuck up, you can't even kill yourself properly. I was made fun of, I was mocked, I was laughed at. I was told that I had put everybody else through so much hell that, why didn't I just finish myself off? I was told that I was probably going to drink myself to death and die so that other people could live and other people could look at someone like me who thought I was smart and had brain power, and look where I was. I was nothing and nobody. The most horrible or abhorrent thing about all of that is I actually thought I deserved all that. And I can't tell you how many people in AA would talk about, in addition to the people telling me that I was selfish and self-centered and just wanting some attention because I was a big baby who couldn't face the real world like a real man, I can't tell you how many other people had to try to outdo me, with their fucking AA stories. They would say something like, "Well, I cut down that way the right way, and I didn't even die. I cut down there and I didn't die. And I was, come to find out, they never did no such fucking thing. They had no scars on their arms or nothing like that. Just more liars and phony fucks." But the weirdest thing about the whole entire experience was I was being treated the way I was being treated in jail, and I was being treated the way I was being treated in the mental hospital. They treat you like a fucking animal in the state mental institution in that shithole place. Was because I was suicidal. Yeah, I thought I was depressed before I got mixed up into all this shit. I'm real fucking depressed now. The only thing I can say about all of that in retrospect is I'm glad I did not kill myself. I'm glad I did not end it. The life I have today is completely 100% different than the life I had back then. But I had no life because of the fucking cult members. I had no life because of the fucking AA people, and I certainly had no support from the toxic fucking family members that refused to do anything for me while I was going through there. I didn't want that much. I just wanted to talk to somebody more than anything else. When your wrists are bleeding in the middle of the night and you're allowed to use a phone only to be told, "Well, I don't care what happens to you," and I'm hung up on you. Those are the same fucking people that wanted to reach out to me after I finally cut ties with AA altogether. Those are the people that wanted to reach out to me and say, "I'm really proud of you and your sobriety and you're doing better," and all that. Fuck you, I wouldn't treat somebody like that when they were down and out. I just can't fathom being that level of cruelty. That's one thing that it did teach me. It taught me just how fucking cruel people can be. And that's not all the worst of the worst that I went through with those AA fucking clowns, but I stayed in AA for several more years after that, attending those fucking meetings. A little later on down the road, I got the DUIs and I got the drug court order thing, and then I stayed in AA even longer after that. The overall message of this video, if there is an overall message, is if you're thinking about taking your own life, please do not. I never will forget in those last moments when I thought I was really going to leave the world, how badly I wanted to live, how badly I wanted to survive. That there were things I wanted to accomplish, there were things I wanted to do, there were things I wanted, I still wanted to live, even in the state that I was in where everything that meant anything to me was taken from me. I still wanted to survive. I just wonder how many people AA has killed. I wonder how many people in AA have taken their own lives successfully because of the same situation. I can't quit drinking, and AA doesn't help me. The funny thing about it is, I remember getting a whole lot of jokes also about, well, you didn't really want to kill yourself or you'd have done it. Why, if I wanted to kill myself, I'd make sure wouldn't survive it. I was pretty sure I wasn't going to survive. When I got to the ER, I was covered in blood. I mean, the arteries in my hands, I got arteries inside my hands that were sewed together. And yeah, I was complete. I lost so much blood that they debated on a transfusion. But I remember one of the people saying, I mean, not a transfusion. They debated on. They hooked me up to IV fluids. They debated upon whether to give me blood or not. You know, and I remember that was right before one of that deputy picked me up, and he said, "Give blood to those that deserve it." You know, I don't know whatever happened to that fucking piece of shit. But I hope when the end comes for him, I hope it's slow and I hope it's painful. But that's my experience with a suicide attempt, and that's what happened to me. There is nothing in this world worth killing yourself over, especially not some fucking cult religion or some addiction. Hell, take a fucking drink before you take your own life. I'd rather drink than do something like what I did to myself then, in spite of all the negative affirmations that AA drills into your head. Anyway, feeling a little funny now that I've talked about all that, and I didn't go over everything that happened to me in that locked up shithole place that I was in. But I'm going to sign out for now. Talk to you guys next week, hopefully.